There's a large variety of tanks you see within the reefing hobby, but every once in a while, you come across something that's truly special. A tank with a captivating aquascape and eye-catching movement. A tank filled with unique and rare inhabitants. And most impressive of all, a tank where everything is not only surviving, but thriving. This is Tony Mel's Red Sea 140 gallon mixed reef tank. But before I show you guys this tank, make sure to crush that subscribe button so that way you don't miss any future videos like this one. Alright, so let's get into it. Tony's tanks are extremely impressive right now. It hasn't always been this way though. He's been in the hobby for quite some time. Tony's first tank was just a 15-gallon nano that he started over 12 years ago. He later upgraded to a 65-gallon, which was a big step up, allowing him to get more corals and bigger fish, but he still wasn't satisfied yet. In his 65, there was a lot of things that he wanted to change, like his obnoxiously loud drain pipe that he said sounded like a toilet constantly flushing. So with that in mind, and with all the other experiences he gained and the lessons he learned, being in the hobby thus far, he knew what he wanted in his dream tank. But even after getting it, his journey wouldn't end there yet. He had his new 140-gallon setup for close to 3 years, when his love for the hobby would be tested once again. There was a huge heat wave in the area that he lived in, and his tank ended up getting overheated. He lost a lot of his high-end SPS colonies and a few other nice corals, such as a scully that he had for over 10 years. This did not discourage him though, as today I'm pretty sure most people wouldn't believe that his system had such a close call with a complete tank die-off. Tony has spent years collecting some of the rarest and most sought-after corals. Like this giant lobophilia, I've never seen something quite like it. It has a lot of really nice contrasting colors, going from a pinkish purple to orange to its vibrant green centers. I really wanted a fragvit, but the entire time he's had it, he says it hasn't grown very much, if at all, unfortunately. Another amazing coral he has, which I'm pretty sure is my favorite coral of all time, is the flaming daisy gonopora. I had this coral in my tank a while back that I picked up from the legendary Big R corals, but unfortunately, I lost it in a really bad tank crash that happened last summer. So I was very happily surprised to instantly see it across the room in his tank. Now I just have to wait for it to grow out so I can get myself a frag. Believe me, I tried to go home with a frag that day. So this is one of the biggest shockers to me. This beautiful tank actually requires very little maintenance. Tony has been running the full Triton method on his system for over 3 years with his Apex dosers that automatically drip a liquefied solution of all the elements his corals need to grow directly into the water. This is complemented perfectly by his Alcatronic that automatically tests the alkalinity in his tank twice a day, then sends the results to his phone, giving him a good peace of mind that his water chemistry is always perfect. And then even if it isn't, it also doses Tropic Marine Alpha Reef to account for any slight fluctuations as a backup if his main system doesn't keep things perfectly in balance. So what does all this gear allow you to do that you can't really do any other way? Have absolutely no water changes. Literally the only time he removes any water from his system is when he's bagging up fragged corals, or when he occasionally vacuums out dead macroalgae in the bottom of his refugium. Even more surprising is considering how long it's been since a water change. The tank's clarity is absolutely pristine. There's no sign of yellowing in the water or noticeable particles floating around. He gets his water to stay this clear by running a carbon reactor and protein skimmer that both work together to remove the small and large particles from the water, then uses a spinning ball of living macroalgae, which is a saltwater plant that consumes organic chemicals like nitrates by growing it in his refugium, and then ripping it apart, removing the organic chemicals that are absorbed into it every so often in the process. Using both these types of filtration, growing Chaeto and dosing Triton solution allows him to basically recycle his water without ever having to do any time-consuming water changes. Another really cool thing he does in combination with all this is he occasionally sends samples of his water in for ICP testing. This gives him access to lab-grade information about his tank parameters. This is basically the magic bullet for all things related to reef tank water. He uses it hard to tell if he needs to dose more or less of a certain element to keep everything perfectly balanced for the best coral growth and health. The next part of his system is the frag tanks. He has one underneath in the sump area that we were just checking out, and then he has another one sitting next to his display tank. They're all plumbed into his main system, so this allows him to get away with using much less equipment, saving him the expense of buying additional gear, and then once again reducing maintenance. These frag tanks are an important part of his operation he has going here, because in these tanks he can easily keep and organize little cut pieces of his coral. This is useful for when he sells these little frags back to local reefers to continue to allow him to get even more special pieces for his tank. He also keeps some of his corals in here to grow them out a little further, like this chalice coral, before he puts it into place in his main display tank. And then the final use for his frag tanks is just to hold on to his corals indefinitely. It was kind of hard to get a camera in there, but the mother of all these beautiful jawbreaker mushrooms is banished to the back of his refugium frag tank. And then finally, the display tank. Besides the corals he keeps in his frag tanks, he keeps most of what he has in his massive Red Sea 140-gallon Starfire Peninsula glass display tank. The Starfire in that name means there's less iron in the glass. This reduces the visual distortion caused by the iron that is in most reef tank glass that leaves it with a slight green hue that you can really see from the side of the tank. So this gives Starfire glass an extremely clear appearance in comparison, and it's pretty much as close to nothing between you and the corals as possible. In his tank, it's also impressive how he can meet all the requirements of different varieties of fish and corals that all need different lighting and water flow. It's really amazing to watch them swim like they're in a real reef, with the flow that's provided by his Ecotech power heads that are set to randomize. These fans give his SPS coral strong enough flow to keep them very healthy, while at the same time keeping the flow weak enough to give his LPS and other corals a more relaxed current that won't make them suck up and get unhappy. Having weaker flow might raise the issue of detritus building up under the rock structures, but he avoided this in a really cool way by strategically suspending the legs of the live rock in his aquascape, allowing the waste buildup to flow much easier through the system without trapping it on the bottom, so it can make its way into the sump and get filtered out. So similarly to how his flow is accommodating to the needs of all his different kinds of corals in his reef tank, his 3 Radion G5 LEDs give off a good amount of light using the AB+ lighting spectrum that keeps his SPS higher up in the tank healthy, while at the same time not blasting his corals that require lower light, like these acans. Throughout the tank, there's an area for almost every kind of coral. There's a zone right here on the end of the peninsula that has some of my favorite corals of all time, Gonopora. These beautiful corals were once thought to be impossible to keep in captivity, but with advancements in reef keeping and switching to mainly collecting only the more hardy species from Australia, they can now thrive in reef tanks just like they're doing in Tony's. He also has a little patch of acans. These large polyp stony corals give this side of the tank some unique shape and color. An interesting thing about acans though is how often they can change their coloration. There can be quite a bit of a difference between it being in one tank and another. For example, these are pictures of the acans in this area. Some look similar, but the others are almost unrecognizable. The exact reason for why they changed could be quite a few different things, such as the lighting and the feeding that occurs, but the exact reason could be pretty difficult to figure out. Then there's a couple little areas of really nice scallies scattered about. They also add some unique shape to the tank, which is probably how they got their common name, the donut coral, although a vast majority of people just opt to call them scallies, which is short for their scientific name, Scalemia. Tony also has a nice little Euphilia garden tucked away behind the 2 large rock structures and underneath the big arch. It includes an assortment of microhammers, torches, and frog spawn. These corals are all best known for their beautiful, flowy movements they provide to the tank. The only problem with them though is that their tentacles will sting and kill most other corals. They even sting ones that are the same type of coral but come from different places, like these Indonesian torches and these Australian torches, that he said he had to move away from each other because they started fighting. This kind of behavior isn't unique to Euophilia though, as most corals don't tolerate touching one another. Torches just have really long tentacles that flow around quite easily, so it can be difficult to properly distance them from other corals in your tank. But at the same time, that's one of the biggest benefits, is that they move around like they do, which is really cool. So for me, they're a must in any reef tank, even if they do come with some downsides. Overall, there's definitely some takeaways from the system that I plan on incorporating into my new 450-gallon multi-tank build. So since all of you guys are already subscribed now, make sure to give that notification bell a little flick. That way you don't miss that video when it comes out. Thank you guys all so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.